Hi, welcome to the episode Empowering Parents Tips and Strategies from a Child and Adolescent Psychiatrist. Let me introduce Adena Blickstein, who will share some her experiences. But first, she's going to tell us a little about herself. So tell us about yourself, Adena.
Sure. So my name is Adena. I am the founder and CEO of Teal Dragon Healing, which is a holistic pediatric psychiatry company. And our focus is healing the parent-child relationship.
Got it. Okay. So let me ask you a couple of questions. Let's start with this. As a child psychiatrist, what are the most common issues you encounter in children today and adolescents?
One of the most common things I see is poor relationships with their parents. The kids coming in with dysregulated behavior, whether it's anxiety, depression, inattention, in my opinion, all stems from difficult relationships with their parents. And I've seen a pattern in which the more dysregulated the child, the poorer relationship they have with their parents.
Okay. Um, are parents generally aware of these issues? Or do you find that many are in denial about their child's like mental health strategy, struggles, and what exactly, they're kind of in denial about what if they really even need any help?
Yes, there's a lot of people are basically lost. Like most of the parents that come to me, they see their child struggling and they're just lost. They feel like they don't know what to do. There's a lot of anxiety in the parent. A lot of the parents have taken the children to a lot of different specialists, from child psychologists to medical doctors to gastroenterologists, trying to solve their children's quote unquote anxiety issue. And usually they come to me after seeking help from other sources to fix, so to speak, or help their child.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Got it. So, as far as like the adult, the parents end of it, um, give me a suggestion one suggestion that you would give to parents today if you had a child. Let's say they're 16 years old, and they barely come out of their room. What would you say to them?
So the parents?
Yeah, like how would you tell them to act in the home? How would you encourage them to get their child to engage more, come out of that room? They feel frustrated. They don't know what to do. Is it mental illness? Is it depression? They don't know.
When you have a situation like that, this is a sign of a disrupted relationship. There's a very high level of disruption. When there's a lack of engagement from a child to a parent, there's a disruption or a betrayal or some sort of problem relationally, because children want to engage. Humans want to engage. We are naturally social. Yes, there are different levels of socialization, and some people are more social than others, but a basic human need is to interact and engage. And that's what babies do.
Right.
They seek engagement, they cry for engagement, they react to their surroundings. And so when there's a isolation or isolative behavior, which is what you're describing, there's
Yeah.
a relational issue. And any relational issue necessitates relational repair. You cannot force engagement when there's such a level of disruption. And
Yeah.
when parents act like, and they try to be interrogative and intrusive, tell me how your day was, da, 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 da. How come you're not engaging with me? Right? Like that is a approach that stems from anxiety and pain. Okay. And when that happens, parents need to understand where this happened, where this began, how this began, and they need professional guidance. What parents do is they try to compensate when they feel their child is disengaging, and they
Yeah.
try to become more intrusive,
Right.
and that alienates the child even further because it's compensatory. They're
Right.
trying to get their child to engage with them. How
Right.
does someone make a friend? If you're walking around and you want people to be your friend, do you go to someone and say, "Oh, what's your name? How was your day?" You don't try to make friends by interrogating and intruding upon people. You make friends because you're an amazing person that people want to befriend.
Right.
And that's what I explain to parents. You need to become a
Yes.
magnet for your child. And if you're not the magnet, you need to work on yourself.
And that's the thing that I'd like to address. I know that coping with my son, the the paths that I've taken, um, I wasn't a helicopter mom, but I definitely was more towards maybe a jumbo jet 747 mom, somewhere more towards there. But I never wanted my kids to be harmed. Like, I wanted the best for them. I'd do anything for them. One turned out okay. The other, and thinks I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. The other, what I noticed was what you just said. I went in more when he was going out more. Now, I always had a relationship with him, and even through his drug addiction and the beginning of those years in high school, we still were very close. If anything, he was way too emotional. I already knew then that he needed help, but how do you get a kid, an adolescent, back then, 12, 14 years ago, they didn't have online psychiatry sessions like they do today. That would have been a lot easier than trying to get my 150-pound kid over to a doctor's office.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the advice I give when there's such a deep level of mistrust, right? Relational rupture always happens because of distrust. And a child doesn't want to engage because of lack of trust. So what I advise parents to slowly ease back into the engagement is, number one, talk about yourself
Mm,
whenever you can.
interesting.
Any interface, just start blabbering about you,
Wow.
because there's no pressure on a child to engage.
Mm.
But opening up your life
Mm-hmm.
and spreading the information about your life and how
Mm-hmm.
you experience your life will make an impact on that. So,
Mm.
an example is, and I hear this so often, how do I get my child to tell me how their day went? I say, just talk about your day. Leave the child alone.
Right.
Talk about your life, talk about your struggles, talk about your challenges, talk about your resilience, talk about your gym experience, talk about going to the bank. Just rattle along.
Okay, but what about this? What about when it's in crisis mode and it gets to
Mhm.
the point where, I never thought I'd have to get to that place of giving my kid an ultimatum. Like, either you follow the rules in my home, or because once you realize they've taken over your home, like, I don't even feel safe anymore. And this is crazy. Like, what happened here? My life is like being controlled by someone else. When you get to that place, Adena, and you're a parent that it's hard, you've been so close to your kid, and now you got to say, take that hard line. These are the rules. And I had to go to a therapist, and gave me a list they told me to write everything down because you get nervous when you're speaking. So I did. I wrote everything down, and I said, if you don't abide by these rules in my house, then you must leave. They did want me to tell them to leave without anything, but as a Jewish mother, there was no way that was happening. And I had to, and any mother doesn't want to see their kid walk out the door with nothing. But I did make that change and that step, which was very hard. And back then, I wish I had someone to talk to. It wasn't as open as it is today, and it's still not open. People don't want to follow my podcast because they don't want to let other people know that they're even listening to it. It's still out there. The stigma is there. You're not going to get those followers. That's not where it's going to be. But how do you tell a parent when that kid left, go on with your life? Okay, keep going. It's hard to live every day like that. What besides getting a coach, how do you feel about that? Having someone to talk to every so often when you feel like you're in crisis?
crisis situation. So I personally, in my practice, I don't work with acute crisis. I'm not equipped because acute crisis necessitates crisis intervention. Crisis
Yes.
intervention could be a crisis intervention center or 911 or emergency and things like that, where you feel threatened, where you feel unsafe.
Right.
That's a totally different ballgame. Those people are not candidates for outpatient work because
Right.
it's already so extreme that it becomes dangerous. And
Right.
when you're in crisis, people, I always have this question, like, I don't espouse authoritarian parenting, nor do I espouse permissive parenting. There's always a middle ground, which is collaborative parenting, where you engage and you're vulnerable and you have empathy and you work together to find collaborative solutions.
Yes.
However, in crisis situations, there's no room, space for collaboration. That's the definition of crisis. And
Right.
then the key is you have to take action that goes over autonomy, that goes
Yeah.
beyond someone's autonomy.
Yeah.
For me, that's painful. For everybody, that's painful because you've reached a point at which you have to take those measures.
Yeah.
And it's the same with life-saving situations in a medical emergency. You're not
Right.
going to go ask someone, hey, can we save your life? You just do it.
Right.
And that's almost you do become authoritarian in those
Right.
situations, but in crisis it's necessary. And so what you're describing is crisis situation in which you needed to take extreme measures for an extreme situation. What I try to do in my work is prevent those crises. And have I had to write behavioral contracts? Have I had to um, have parents and children work on behavioral contracts? Absolutely. But until it escalates, and hopefully it won't, but the key behind those behavioral contracts is the why.
Right.
I'm not talking about the crisis at that point of crisis, but prior to the crisis, I had a case of a patient a teenager who would bring all his friends to the home, get drunk all the time. Now, it wasn't crisis, but it was obviously disturbing for the parents. So I had a meeting with the parents and I said, write down all the things you don't want and write why, and then write how it impacts you, right?
Mhm.
So the way things impact you is so important for a child to know because that creates empathy. And this is why overstepping that and becoming authoritarian doesn't engender empathy. It doesn't
Right.
engender empathy. It engenders obedience. And that's what we want to
Mm.
prevent in relationships. So yes, crisis necessitates authoritarian approaches, but prior to the crisis, if something bothers you, if something your child's doing is upsetting you, it's
Right.
very important you become vulnerable and you say why. Last
Right.
night I just had a patient that the daughter started screaming at the dad, and the dad, instead of yelling back,
Yeah.
said, when you scream at me, it makes me feel ashamed and angry.
Mhm.
And that was brilliant because they became vulnerable. And
Right.
so that vulnerability causes a child to be empathetic, but being
Right.
controlling causes a child to be alienated. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, but when you deal with crisis of that extreme, really repair, it's not a time for repair because
Right.
repair requires time and collaboration. But in
Yes.
crisis, you needed to do what you needed to do. And
But then
and
after the crisis,
after
yeah.
that, that's the time for repair when it's you're not in crisis, right? He's in his own space, you're in your own space. You go out and you say, listen, I want to repair, I want to
Right.
reunify. We have
Right.
been through so much together. How can we work this out? What I say to
Right.
parents and kids, or parents, because parents, reunification is always initiated by parents, not kids. It's important to understand that it's going to come from parents first. I
Right.
say, do you have a will? Do you have desire and commitment? That's all you need. Do you
Right.
want to repair? And are you committed to repair? That's all you need. Two criteria. You don't need the skills and you don't need the know-how. I'll help with that.
Right.
But when you have to set your own boundaries for self-love, right? It could be a child, it could be with a partner, it could be with a coworker, it could be with a client. Sometimes
Right.
I have to do that with my clients.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't like to, but if a client's overstepping my boundaries for
Right.
respect, for collaboration with me, I have to set boundaries, even though I don't like to, I don't
Right.
want to, but I have to. And it's important part of healthy living. no
Right.
matter who it is.
So let me ask you something. What do you think when a parent is is there to support their child? You see them emotional. They're crying on an awful lot. Uh, they they're they kind of feel like you become their therapist. They're putting it all on you, and you're listening as if you're their therapist. It happens a lot in drug addicts, because they're very emotional, right? Ups and downs. Marijuana, even marijuana. Oh, a little marijuana is not going to hurt. Yeah, it doesn't hurt certain people, but other people, it's a downer for. If people have bipolar and they don't realize it, their kids have it. That's the emotions right there. Um, what what do you do with that? What does a parent do when they're in that situation?
So you're basically saying, how do you support your child without being enmeshed and enabling them?
Yeah,
Okay. So a lot of people who are addicted have a personality disorder called victim narcissism,
yeah,
in which they are narcissistic, but not necessarily in the grandiose way, like I'm amazing, but they're narcissistic from the needy victim way. I need this. I need this. I need this. I need you. I need you. But it's really, I hate using this word, but there's a manipulative quality to that neediness.
yes,
And what people and parents especially have to realize is that every single human being is capable of getting to the level they want to get to. They
right,
can get the resources they need. They can get the support they need. Everything's out there and available.
right,
Now, I'm not talking about a minor and I'm not talking about a child.
right,
Even though we have adults that are emotionally maybe there, when you're at a certain level, I would say chronologically, even though maybe emotionally you're not, people must realize that every human being has the capacity and capability to access any help they want.
right. And they have
Period.
a decision.
Exactly. They have free will.
Yeah. You know,
Any, yeah.
go
No,
on.
but so any parent who gets drawn into victim narcissism
Yeah,
is not aiding them. But what
right,
you can do, you can easily just cut off and create boundaries. Like
yeah,
we can talk, but if you start draining my energy or talking about this or talking about that, I can't engage with you.
right,
Or um or you can just it depends again if they're in, this is the problem parents have. They don't know what's real and what's not. Neither does the child. They don't know what's they're really needy of and what they're kind of creating a need for. And
right,
that's a sign of poor regulation. They can't regulate. Internally, they feel so needy. They have such a void. They're trying to fill the void with everything else. I
right,
compare it to I do an exercise for people in my, I teach something called dragon yoga. Dragon yoga is from the company I created these movements, exercises about embodiment. What is embodiment? It's being full of yourself. So if you take water and you pour it in, the water has your name on it, and you pour the water into you, how do you fill yourself with you? And
right,
only until you're filled with you can you feel good about you, because you're full of you. People with addiction, people who have personality disorders are really empty of them. They're
right,
empty of them most of the time. And so what they need, because they feel so empty, is to fill themselves with other people's energies.
right.
And that's why you have the feeling of being pulled around them, because you
Mm,
are. You're literally being pulled
yeah,
from their energies, pulling your energy to fill them up.
right.
But
Adina,
yeah,
just listening to you, it's bringing up about the mental illness component of this, because I believe that just the experience at what I've had through the years, and understanding the little that I have, even to this day, I mean, it constantly sways, because if you're not if you haven't gone through the education, the proper education, you cannot diagnose anything. Okay. But I also, but before I get to that, one of the things I realized as a parent is, and I've seen it because I've talked to people and I've helped them work through this. They were more worried about where their kid would go to college. And typically, geniuses, they could go anywhere, walk into the SATs, 100%, no problem. But They were more concerned about that, just getting them through high school. They'll get to that place. It's not, they'll get over this. And then the disappointment comes when that can't hold it anymore. It's like, they're lucky, not lucky, but if it even goes to that college level, it doesn't last long. It's the first semester and it's done. It's done. And then the spiraling of up and down, and your kid's still feeling like they're actually they're letting you down because that was your goal, not theirs.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't keep that goal, even though they're smart. Maybe that makes them feel worse. I've encountered a lot of people that I've spoken to and worked through this with. And I actually personally have shared this with people that after my son's first rehab, when he came out and he was clear, it wasn't right away, because a lot of times if you think 30 days is going to clear someone from drugs, no way, no how. It takes a lot longer to really see where they're at mentally and when their clarity comes back. Actually, you have a better chance the first time after rehab. By the time the third time of rehab comes, it's at least a year and a half until it's going to happen. But when I did get to that place, I said to him I was sorry, because I just felt like he was so smart. He had so much potential, and he was so natural at things that this came to him, and he could have gone Ivy League anywhere, as if that was the most important, which after the end of the day, it means nothing. I'd rather him be here today, sitting next to me, healthy as can be, and going to Starbucks and having a great job and being happy. I'd be happy with that. When I said that to him afterwards, I release you of that. That was me. He thanked me. He thanked me for that. He understood that. He knew that he couldn't get to that place. That I feel like parents sometimes, everybody means well, so to speak. They're just not educated on the things to do or not do. Or like you said before, have that communication talk, put it back on you. In some way, share your feelings, which, there we go. That was probably the first time I expressed that, and how that made me feel or whatnot. So I think that, what I'm hearing from you is that also it's really important for the parents to pick up their skills, learn about the situation their kids are in, and not just think someone like you, a psychiatrist, is going to be able to solve the world and all their problems. It's a collaboration.
Exactly. And it's amazing. I am so happy that you said, I would be happy if you just went to Starbucks but was healthy and sitting here with me. Parents have lost perspective, and they, without realizing, create such feelings of deep-seated inadequacy in their kids, because they're focused on the wrong things.
Yeah.
And that is school.
Yeah.
I am a big proponent of dropping the idea of academic achievement, and for many reasons. Without mental health and without confidence, a child cannot do what they want to do anyway. They don't have the confidence for it.
Right.
And a lot of our school system is completely repressive. They don't care about the desires of the child.
Right.
They care about a system.
Right.
There's so many opportunities of learning in this world. There's online, there's internships, there's travel. There is limitless potential.
Yeah.
And we are breaking a paradigm of degrees and like diplomas. We are breaking the paradigm.
Yeah.
And for a parent to get stuck on this paradigm, there's going to be so much resistance, and I'm seeing that in my practice. Kids don't want to go to school.
Yeah.
Because school sucks. And school is not meant for those kids. Those kids are creative, beautiful, divine beings that are meant to do beautiful, innovative things. And the school isn't matching their potential. It's not a kid problem, it's a school problem.
Yeah.
And the more parents hang on to that paradigm, the sicker they create. The sicker they create the system and the kids. And I tell parents all the time, grades are not important.
Right.
Grade is arbitrary. It's completely arbitrary. What's important? How confident your child is, how good they feel about themselves, how loving they are about themselves.
Yeah.
And this is a pitfall parents fall into all the time.
Yeah.
There is so much opportunity to learn. Learning is natural. When you guide someone into their true calling and true desires, That
Yeah.
is joy. That is pure joy. And that's our purpose here. That is our divine purpose.
Right.
Not to be an A student. It's not our divine purpose.
You know, the most sophisticated thing I've heard from an adolescent recently, a cousin of mine has a son, went to Denver, University of Denver, couldn't get into University of Miami, very bright kid, but okay, he didn't really care. He ended up going to Denver, and he knew a couple of kids, and he's the first year freshman, and he was smart, he was clever. He had his mom come out and talk to the counselor, you know, the student counselor, whatever, with him. And he said, Mom, I'm not coming back next year. I'm leaving school. So she said, he knew how she would react. So he did it in a very bright way. He said, look, I don't smoke. I don't drink. Everyone I know here is going to be going into a fraternity, and all they do all day is smoke and drink. I don't like it. This is what he said to her. He said, I think it's a waste of your money. And I'm really not learning anything. And I don't even know what I want to do with my life. So why am I here? And that's how I feel. Now, that's a mature kid. You're not going to find that in a lot of places. He's confident and he has that. But you know how many kids are in that system that you're just talking about? Why? What are they really coming out with?
Yeah, I think we have a very big problem, and we
Yeah.
create a lot of dissatisfaction and life dissatisfaction
Yeah.
because we create a paradigm in which a system has this mindset in which the learning shouldn't be joyful and amazing and loving. And I have not met, you know, happy, bright, joyful children who are in the system. There, a lot of them are just miserable, and we need to listen to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a society,
Yeah.
what is going on? And one of the biggest problems is that we pull people out of ground. What is ground? When we're listening to what we love, when we're doing what we love, we feel in our bodies, we feel happy, we feel good. We feel good in our body.
Right.
And but when we put people in systems that are not good for their body, we basically pull out their essence of what they joyfully want to do. And for every single person, that's different. It's
Yeah.
different for everybody. And
Yeah.
the school system started, you know, in the history of humanity relatively recently.
Yeah.
Children were born and they were just apprenticed, or they followed their parents, or they did fun activities that they wanted to do. So the real question is, how do we guide children to be educated but remain in their joy and their natural curiosity? Because that's when we have the most brilliant, brightest minds. And like Montessori system has that mindset.
Right. Yeah,
Montessori school.
what about the kids that they can't cope? Their parents, they've lost their kids. They find their kids are coming back from school or dropping out or whatever the story is. Their kid, you know, a friend of mine turned to me and said, I don't know why my kids hate me. You know, like, and they're in that age category. And I said, well, you know, maybe they don't hate. It's not that they hate you. They're frustrated that they can't be what you want them to be. What you enjoyed, they don't enjoy. But you know, we grew up in this world where these are the things you have to do because we were
Yeah.
taught that way. You have to be like this. You have to believe that. You have to be like that. It doesn't with any religion, with anything it is. And
Yeah.
that I think's made a huge impact on all these kids.
Exactly. And we're having a generation now in which they are done with obligation-based living. There's
Right.
no such thing as doing what you have to do. You create your life. You
Yeah.
do whatever you want to do. And that's true desire-based living. Desire-based living is really divine living. It's living within your divine right to exist, because we're all here temporarily. We live, we die. It's short term. And we
Yeah.
have to ask ourselves, why are we here? If we're
Yeah.
conditioned from a young age to believe that we're here to be a certain profession, to believe that we're here to do something, we end up with a society that's very unhappy
Yeah.
because we're really being conditioned out of our natural desires. Children will always tell you how they want to be parented. They'll always show you what their natural interests are. It's not difficult. You'll
Right.
see it from a young child and it'll proceed. The problem is when we suppress or we don't listen or we're not tuned in. And if we're not tuned in, then we ignore what the child actually wants. And It's because we're not listening to what they really want to do. Of course they're going to be mad at you.
Or ask them, or
Yes,
ask them.
yes. And we
Yeah.
need to follow their lead. We need to be following their leads in terms of interests.
Yeah.
And parents who do that have the most amazing successful outcomes. We just did a podcast. We have a podcast called Resilience on Teal Dragon. We interviewed Jason Holter, who runs a sports for children. And tell me about the parents of really great athletes. He said the parents of amazing athletes, pro level, they don't push anything. They're just the most chilled. They're not the parents who care about the scores. They're not the parents who care about the wins. They're just going with their child's interests and following those interests.
Yeah.
And that's and I think it's about, really the key is enmeshment and boundaries. A parent who is lost, ungrounded, doesn't understand, feels anxious, parents in an anxious way, usually they're not really aware. Actually, I was a parent just like this, so they're just following the way they were parented. They're not really consciously parenting because they
Yes.
don't have the skills. To be a
Yes.
conscious parent, you have to learn the skills. Just
Yes.
like to be a surgeon, just like to be a teacher, you need to learn these skills.
Right.
If you don't have the skills, you're largely going to feel like you're flailing.
Right.
And that's what most parents out there are. They're flailing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they know they're flailing.
Right.
And so what I do is I break everything down very, very simply to teach parents the skills they need to feel completely confident in their parenting. There's no, am I guilty? Did I do this right? Oh my goodness. Does he like me? Does he hate me? No, no, no. You are grounded. You
Right.
know what you need. You know what you're doing.
Right.
And that's what that's really the key. A parent who's grounded will have a kid who's grounded.
Yeah. But Adena, so much in life between working full time and raising your kids. And, come on. I mean, and trying to keep your relationship going and the food on the table and the this and the that. It's really.
I'm not saying so.
grounded.
This is. I had an issue like this. How do we do this when everything is going on and everything goes so fast and we have so many responsibilities? I said, listen, if you become your conditioned parent of authoritarian, what it will do. So let me explain. Authoritarian and permissive are efficient in the short term.
Right.
It's efficient in the short term. You control your kid or you say, do whatever you want. Yeah.
Right.
But it disrupts the relationship. So even though the skills might be difficult to gain, I always say 3 months, you're in, you're out. By 3 months, you're good.
Right.
You don't unlearn the skills. You're in a car, you don't unlearn how to drive.
Right.
You don't unlearn a language.
Right.
If you have a language, you have the skills. It is not difficult. It is not causing more time. It's an investment initially, and then it's great.
Adena, you said, and then I'm going to let you go. But one of the things I just heard you say, which was just set something off in my mind, is, one of the biggest things with parents that have adolescent kids that are addicts, mental illness, it takes them a long time to get out of denial, but then they go in and out of denial. So like they take that and they think they're out of denial, and then they can't hold on to it. So they go back in until one day they can do it. It's not so easy. And look, you love your kid and mistakes have been made. You don't look back. You got to look forward and just keep chugging. But I think that I believe that when a parent can get to that place, which just like you said, just like the kid has to get to that place and feel good and feel confident, the parent can't do it for them. Nobody could do it for the parent. And then they end up, how like people start blaming everyone else around them. Oh, it's my family is judging me. My friends are judging me. No one's judging you. They don't understand because you don't understand. You don't even understand what's going on. I talk about that a lot. And I think that's such an important thing to talk about because, it's out there, Adena. And then finally, and I hear it, and then they say they know they're doing the wrong thing. They know they shouldn't be doing it. They can't control themselves. It's sad. And it is because sometimes it really needs to take like a knock on your head to say, enough. I can't let this happen anymore.
So a lot of what I do is I work on the inner child of the parent, because a lot of the parent's behavior is really about their own deep wounding as a child when they were parented, and not like I understand exactly what you're saying. It's like they can't handle setting boundaries that they know are good for them,
Right.
because they grew up in a childhood in which setting boundaries was probably looked down upon,
Yeah.
and they're just so used to it, and they can't not do it. It's like so ingrained. That requires a lot of inner therapy for the parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of what I do, especially with the kids who do have addictions, and a lot of times I do get calls, fix my kid. And I know, and I said, It's very sad, but I go back to the parent, because the kids like completely needs a treatment program, refusing treatment program. And I go back to the parents and I say, how can I support you?
Right.
I want to support you.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, but the ones who say fix my kid are the ones living in denial. And then when I ask the parents, how can I support you? They're in denial about the fact that they need support.
Yeah.
Denial is a great thing because you pretend it doesn't exist.
Yes.
And why are people in denial? Because of pain. Because
Yeah.
of simply because of pain. Why
Yeah.
is this father living like this? Because
Yeah.
he lived in denial as a kid. He
Right.
was in too much pain.
Right.
And
Right.
and denial is one of the most extreme coping mechanisms, meaning at the most extreme pain, because
Yeah.
it's really like blinding. It's a dissociation and denial are two of where a person has experienced most extreme trauma. It's just so bad that a
Yeah.
person cannot open up to it. There's
Yeah.
other coping mechanisms that are much easier to get through: projection, displacement. Those
Yeah.
are much easier, but denial and dissociation is out of body,
Yeah.
denial is out of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't work with people like that, because
Right.
there's too many barriers. If I always say, if somebody wants the help, they have to ask for it. To If someone in denial, they can't really ask for it.
That's why I think at the beginning, Dina, what I've seen, like I had to go to like Al-Anon meetings. And I think it's the funniest thing because at the beginning, when I used to go, I'd be like, oh, these poor people. I'd come out of there, be like, oh, and I think my situation's bad. Let me tell you something, 14 years later, I heard a lot of those same stories that I went through. But back then, it was like, wow. And because I had that training that year, which I think is so important, because like I didn't think my kid had a mental illness, but I went to National Association of Mental Illness. They have this class, this parenting class. It's free. It's like 10 weeks. Maybe it's a little money, whatever it was, 10 weeks. Wow. I walked out of there. I'm like, oh my God, we all have the same stories. We all have the same stories, Adina. And like some were in denial, some weren't. But like by the end, we all realized, yeah, there's some mental aspects, illness here. Like something's here.
Right. Addiction especially
Yeah.
is a denial-based disease.
Yeah. Yeah, the parents have to educate themselves because then they'll know how to react and how to, if you don't know that, then you're actually enabling them
Right.
to fall, but they don't
Right.
know. That's how,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And
So,
also addiction, just in addiction itself, right, is
yeah,
escaping from the pain. It's leaving the pain. It's a denial-based disease, which means that someone who's going to drugs cannot even face the reality. And so
right.
they want to just choose a different reality. So it's denial is huge within addiction, someone who's addicted, and then the families. So every different mechanism has a different coping mechanism. Like anorexia has its own thing, OCD has its own thing. Anyway.
Well, I'm going to end at this, but what I wanted to share with you, what I also know, the sooner a parent can catch on, the sooner they feel that even if they're not sure, to take your child to get evaluated at a younger age. They in 8th grade, all of a sudden you're seeing, he's acting a little strange and different. I'm going to take him. It's so much easier. I wish I would have done that. I swear, everyone, if you can do that, do it, because that is what is going to, it's not necessarily going to make everything better. You never know what's going to make it better, but it's a start early enough that it could potentially give it a better path or a more secure path. onto understanding and maybe not leading into such severe addiction or mental illness. So
100%. And I have parents coming to me with kids at a young age. I think something's off. So happy, like in the sense
that,
that they're coming to me in such an early stage, because the earlier we worked on the relationship, 3 months, we repaired.
yeah,
This child set for life. Seriously,
yeah,
set for life. Because I talked to the parents, I worked on the repair is intact. That they're
right,
on the trajectory of being intact as opposed to going through the same reactions, interactions. We can, my belief, my true belief is that we can prevent mental illness across the board, across the world. We do
yeah,
not have to think it's inevitable. It's not. It's there's so much nurture involved.
yeah,
That's why I focus on the parent-child relationship, because when you heal the parent-child relationship, you prevent mental illness, you cure mental illness. It changes the brain,
got it.
and that's my true belief.
Hmm.
So yes, the
Okay.
earlier the better.
Adena, you've been amazing. Thank you for being a guest on my podcast. And I look forward to spending more time with you and having more podcasts with you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. My
Okay.
pleasure. My
Thanks.
pleasure.